I recently wrote an article titled Understanding High School Credits. And while that article is available on the Academy website, I know for some it may just be difficult to get a chance to sit down and read articles on the site. Maybe being able to flip on a video is a little more convenient. So I'd like to share some of the ideas that I shared in that article on video, so parents can take a listen and think about these things, and we can better serve our kids. One of the concerns that we have to deal with as homeschool administrators, which is what we are in homeschooling, is the production of a high school transcript. And one of the most frustrating things that I see is that Catholic homeschool kids are penalized by their parents for being homeschooled. They're penalized for being homeschooled. This is most evident when we look at high school transcripts and credits that are received by students and given by their parents. It's especially bad when parents enroll their homeschool students in online programs that provide transcripts, because so much of their children's education is left off the transcript. So let's talk about high school credits and understand some important things that will improve our homeschooling and help our kids. When we talk about a high school transcript, there's a normal set of courses that colleges expect to see on a transcript. For example, they expect to see 4 years of English, 4 years of mathematics, 4 years of science, and let's just say 4 years of history and 4 years of language arts, because no college-bound student should have less than that. So 4 years of those major modern high school subjects. Now, what do they actually want to see? They want to see that a student has completed 1 credit for each of those studies. So they should have 4 credits of English, 4 credits of mathematics, 4 credits of science, 4 credits of history, 4 credits of a foreign language. That's what a college is looking for on a transcript. What is a credit? That's the question that we should ask. What is a credit? And this is where our kids get penalized. A credit, when we're talking about high school education, refers to something that's called a Carnegie unit. A Carnegie unit. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about credits on high school transcripts. A Carnegie unit. And what a Carnegie unit is a unit or a measure of academic activity. And what it basically says, this was developed in the late 1800s as public schools were developing, early 1900s. What it says is a student that receives 120 hours of time with an instructor receives 1 Carnegie unit. To receive 1 Carnegie unit or 1 credit, a student must have 120 hours of academic activity with an instructor. That's what a credit means. So a credit is a measure of 2 things. First of all, a quantity of time and a quality of time. It's not just time alone. So reading a book is not time that qualifies for a credit because it's time supervised or directed by an instructor or a teacher. Any time supervised or directed by an instructor qualifies as academic time that can be totaled up to fulfill one Carnegie unit in a subject for one credit in that subject. Now, I was a public school student. I left the house at 7:30 in the morning for school, and from 8 o'clock until, let's say, 3 o'clock, I was in school. Out of those 7 hours, maybe one of them was spent without supervision, in the sense that it was a study hall or something like that, lunchtime. But the 6 hours, I was under the direction of a teacher. And so every day, I would pick up 5 or 6 hours across all my subjects towards my high school credits. When school ended at 3 o'clock, I left school, and from 3 o'clock p.m. until 8 o'clock a.m. the next morning, I had a total time of 0 hours under the direction of an instructor. The only time that I received credit towards the time under the direction of an instructor, which contributes to a high school credit, was when I was in school with my school teachers. And this is where the modern school academic calendar comes from. If there are 180 days in the school year and a class meets 5 days a week or 180 times a year for 40 minutes, that's 2/3 of an hour times 180 days. And that gives us 120 hours of time with an instructor. That's one credit. That's where these numbers come from. So, just as an example, when a school tells a child, if you miss more than 10 days of school, you have to go to summer school or you have to repeat the grade, it's because you don't qualify for that credit, because you didn't have 120 hours with an instructor. That's how my life was as a school student. From 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, I was on the clock, receiving credit for activities under the direction of an instructor. Now, let's consider a homeschool student. Who is the homeschool student's teacher? The homeschool student's teacher is his parents. When is he with his parents? He's with his homeschool parents 24 hours a day. If his homeschool parents direct his academic activity, he can receive how many hours of academic credits? It's hard to even imagine what a homeschool student should receive in terms of academic credit for time directed by an instructor. His parents are the instructor. So, for example, in my school, we would take a field trip. Let's say we would take a field trip to a museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We'd go as a social studies field trip. We'd be there for 4 hours. And because we were with our teacher, we were credited with 4 hours of social studies activity towards our social studies credit for the year. 4 hours for a trip to the museum with our teacher. But if I went to the same museum without my classmates, without my teacher, but if I went with my mother as a school student, I would receive nothing. However, if I'm a homeschool father and I take my son to the same museum for the same activity, my son is with his instructor and he receives 4 hours of credit in social studies. If we sit down as a family and watch a movie, let's say a documentary about the Second World War, and it's a 2-hour movie. I'm the homeschool parent. My children are homeschool students. My children are watching a film with academic value for their history class with their instructor for 2 hours. Do they get credit for that? In most homeschool families, no, they don't. They should. They should, but they don't. If I am teaching a high school class, as I did, high school history, and I decide that to cover this lesson on the Second World War, we're going to watch this documentary in class. And for 2 class periods, I play a movie. The children sit in their desks and watch the movie. The same movie that the homeschool boy watches with his parents. They get 2 hours of credit for that movie. That contributes towards their 120 hours for 9th grade world history. Does the homeschool student get those credits? He should, but normally he doesn't. And this is what I mean when I say homeschool students are penalized by parents who don't take homeschooling seriously. So let's think about it. If you're a homeschooling parent and you're with your child every day, are you going to put on some goofy movie that accomplishes nothing? When, if you would take some time and make some effort to plan family movies that are actually useful in the context of your children's education, every single movie night as a family could be adding hours of academic activity to your children's high school transcripts. Or you can neglect to do that and have your children left with a high school transcript that makes them look like dum-dums, like they get out of school at 3 o'clock and stare at the wall until the next day. That's what homeschool kids look like, and that's one of the chief reasons why homeschooling is looked at negatively, is sometimes criticized by colleges or education professionals, is because homeschool families sign up for these dopey homeschool program transcripts that contain nothing more than what's found on a public school student's transcript. And what that makes it look like is that that student, from 3 p.m. until the next morning, never does anything. And so that homeschool student, by the parent just seeking a normal, modern high school transcript, either A, penalizes the child for doing much more, but without any credit for it, or what's even worse, and I'm afraid even more common because I hear parents talk about this, is that the parents settle and just do what's going to be put on that normal, modern high school transcript. I've heard parents boasting, Catholic parents, Catholic homeschooling parents, boasting that they start school, quote unquote school, at 9:30 in the morning and they're done for the day at lunchtime. What in the world are you folks talking about? You have the opportunity to direct your child's activities 24 hours a day, and you're going to let what's on a public school student's transcript set the bar for what's going to be on your homeschooled child's transcript. Just think of how irresponsible that is, how upside down that thinking is. We're going to spite our children, have them stay home in the environment where they have a registered home school, and we're going to intentionally limit their study time to what's on a modern high school transcript. Can it get any more backwards than that? And yet that's, from what I hear, very common. Parents often write to me when they're considering using Classical Liberal Arts Academy materials, and they ask, so what does a typical day look like for a family using Classical Liberal Arts Academy? What in the world does that mean? You're the homeschool administrator. You're the only person who knows what your homeschool can look like. What would my ideal be? Well, I could tell you what my ideal would be. My ideal would be that children would get up with their parents early in the morning, have morning prayer together, read the scriptures together in the morning, then spend 3 hours or so working through classical liberal arts studies before lunch, take a break at midday, pray midday prayer, have lunch together, study for another few hours, formal academic studies, 3-4 more hours after lunch, take a break, say the rosary together, take an hour or two for recess, go outside, play, work in the garden, run around, get some exercise, come back in for evening prayer and dinner, settle down for the evening, get washed up, spend another hour or two doing some more academic work, maybe some literature or enrichment studies, and then go to and have night prayer and go to bed. That's what an ideal Catholic homeschool day would look like, I think. But I don't understand what this idea is where we think that we're going to sign up as homeschool families and put in 3 hours a day in the education of Catholic children because that's what public school kids have on their transcript. That's upside down. So what you need to understand as a homeschool parent is that there's no limit to the amount of credits that you can put on your child's high school transcript. There's no reason why your child can't have 4 years of English, 4 years or 4 credits of English, 4 credits of Latin, 4 credits of Greek, 4 credits of calculus, 4 credits of algebra, 4 credits of classical geometry, 4 credits of natural science, on and on and on, rather than having 24 credits, which is around the normal number of high school credits. There's no reason why your child can't have 48 credits on a high school transcript. And it'd be completely legitimate and true, because that's what you've done. He's lived with his instructor. Time was used, focused on seeking wisdom, studying, learning, When movies were watched, they were good movies with an academic purpose. When family vacations were planned, they were planned with academic benefits in mind as a homeschool family. It was a class trip. There's no limit to the advantages that your child, as a homeschool student, can enjoy if you understand what credits are on a transcript and how you can plan them, record them, and add them when it's time to make your child's high school transcript. Catholic homeschool children are being horribly penalized by parents who don't make the effort to make more strategic use of time that they have with their high school children, that don't record activities that are activities with academic credit, and that leave them off the transcript. So, if you understand what a credit is, that it's simply a measure of quantity and quality of time, shouldn't your homeschool children have several times as many credits as a student who attends school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.? Shouldn't a homeschool child have multiple times as many credits? Of course they should. And that's what I think the world is waiting for homeschooling to become. We can radically improve homeschooling, but we have to fix things. The first thing we have to do is stop imitating the world around us and think about what we're doing, because we're penalizing our kids, and we can fix it. I hope that's helpful. I'm sure that's going to provoke some questions. I'm happy to talk about these things. As a homeschooling father, I'm thinking through these things myself every day, because I think I've done it to some of my older children. I've penalized them for countless hours of discussions, studies, movies, family trips, and so on that never made it to their high school transcript. And that was my mistake. So I hope that's helpful. God bless.